Next, we're going to connect the client, the browser, an HTML client to the server, which is in itself connected to the data store. So let's go ahead and move to our work area. And the first thing that we need to do before we go any further is to configure our HTTP server to serve static HTML files. And as you can see here, I have created a directory called public, and inside of here are the files that this application is going to serve. Now, before we look at that file, we need to make the change in the HTTP server in order to configure this so that it can serve static files. So if you take a look at the comments, you'll see that there is a line where I have made a comment to that effect. It says configure express to serve static files from public directory. I'm going to go ahead and enter the configuration. You enter app.use, and inside of it, we enter express static, and then the directory from which those static files are going to be served from. In this case, as mentioned, this is going to be the public directory. Now, at that point, we can go ahead and close the server. The server can now serve files from the public directory. Let's go ahead and prove that. We're going to go ahead and close. We'll go ahead and run node HTTP server. And as you can see there, it is running on port 3000. We're now going to go ahead and enter localhost, the port we're on, and then index.html, which is the name of the file. And as you can see there, we get the HTML back. Now we can go ahead and go into the public directory and open up that HTML file. And we'll make some comments about the HTML code that we have. The first thing to note is that there are a couple of links at the top of the page. The first one loads some styles from the web, and this is why we have a button that is blue, because I'm using some of the styles from Bootstrap, as you can see here, a widely used set of styles. In fact, the largest set of styles used anywhere on the web. The next thing is the script that is being loaded, and that is Super Agent. We're going to be making calls to our HTTP server through the browser, and we're going to use this library to simplify our communication. There's a lot of low-level things that need to be kept track of, and by using this library, it will be simpler to do that. Now, as we enter the body of the document, as you can see here, there are a couple of formatting tags. The main tag, as you can see here, and the body tag, which simply denotes the body of the HTML document. Now there is also a status div, and we will use that to write to the UI once we are successfully pulling data from the server. And the next one is simply a button that on click, that is the on click event, when you press on that button, calls a function called data. And as you can see here, I have already the basics of that function, the function data. I'm then getting a handle on the status div that we just looked at, the one that is on line 10. I'm specifying the path. This is the path that I'm going to access on the server. And if we open up the server again, let me go ahead and move up a directory to the server, and we'll see the server. And that is the very first route, as you can see here, right? And this is the one that simply returns all the data that we have on the small database, right? And this is the rest of the configuration for this library. You can see here the first thing that we use out of it from that object is get, and we pass the URL, which is just that path to that directory. And then once it ends, it takes a callback, and we can go ahead and write that now. And that callback takes two parameters. The first parameter is error, in case that call fails and you have an error message. And the second one is the response. Inside of that callback, we'll handle both of those conditions. If there is an error, we will write it to the console. And we will simply write the error. And if there is no error, else, then we will write to the console our response object. And so I'm going to simply say console.log and then res. So pretty simple case. We call, the callback function takes a couple of objects. One of them is the error object in case it exists, and the other is the response from the server. In this case, we're simply going to write to the console either of them. So let's go ahead and save this file, and let's go ahead and reload. Let me make my font a little smaller so we can see, and reload so that we get the latest code. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the console for the browser as well. Let me go ahead and make this smaller so we can see it. And we'll move to the console. And at this point, we'll go ahead and make a call. So just to emphasize what we're doing, I am on this button here. I'm going to click it. That will call the data function, which in itself will make a call to the server, and it will return the data that is in our small database if we are successful. So let's go ahead and try that. And as you can see there, we were successful. If we expand this, we see everything that comes back as a response object. And I happen to know that the body is what contains the data from our small database. And you can see there the data that we have entered previously. Now we can go ahead and modify this code here to update the status that is the status div that is on the page. And we can set the inner HTML to be the body. So we're going to go ahead and use a property or a method in the language, which is json.stringify. And we're going to pass it response.body because we know that's where the data is. So again, let me go ahead and save this. I'm going to go ahead and reload the page. And now I will go ahead and press show all data. And as you can see there, we're now updating the user interface. We have called the function on the server. We have brought that back. We're writing it to the console. And then we're also writing it to the browser UI. So have a look at this, call some of the other functions, make sure you understand what's happening here. There's a lot going on. There are 3 tiers. You're going from client to server to data store. And so test that your assumptions that you're making are in fact valid and that you're comfortable going through all of the tiers.